Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of the Max Off-Road Podcast Remote Rips Edition. Today, we have a very special guest, Rodney Smith. Rodney is a five-time Brazilian motocross champion. I think he's been to 6 days 7 times. He's got gold medals. He got third in the 250 Premier Class Championship, motocross championship back in the 90s. The guy's an all-time savage. He's a naturally talented rider, and I've been fortunate enough, he's an AMA Hall of Famer. I've been fortunate enough to have him as a mentor. He's been my mechanic at Endurocross last year, and we're going to do it again this year. I've learned so much from Rodney, and he's an absolute pleasure to talk to. We speak about 6 days racing. We talk a lot about training, how to prepare, mindset, how to keep things fresh, keeping things fun, what he's learned from his professional career that he's applied to his life, and just a lot of other things in between. Excuse me. It was an absolute awesome episode. Rodney is Haas certified to the max. I think you're going to like it. Let us know what you liked about it or disliked about it in the comments, please. Before we get rolling, we got to give a quick shout out to our sponsors because that's what we do and that's what keeps this bus rolling. First and foremost, Beta Motorcycles. Beta has been a huge part of my program. Rodney worked for Beta as well. I absolutely love the Betas. I run the 300 two-stroke for Endurocross, and I'm running the 250 two-stroke at IST. They have the best two-stroke on the market, in my opinion. The carbureted engine has got so much good low-end power. The chassis works great. I can ride the bike hard without feeling out of control. I'm absolutely obsessed with my Betas. Beta Motorcycles. They're also coming out with a 350 RX, a 350 two-stroke edition, which I'm very excited to ride. I haven't ridden one yet, but I'm chomping at the bit to give one of those a try. So stay on the lookout for any of that content and action. Slavensracing.com. These guys are Haas certified to the max. They are by the riders for the riders. They have a full staff of experienced dirt bike riders that know what you need. If you have questions or anything like that, give them a shout. They'll tell you exactly what you need. They have all my favorite Haas certified enduro dirt bike products, Plus tires, a range of mousses, mousse balls, Michelin mousses, nitro mousses, whatever you prefer, skid plates, bulletproof protection for your bike. They have everything that one may need and the knowledge to tell you what they need. And what else is great about Slavens is when you spend your dollar with them, you're voting for the off-road community. They do a lot to work to keep trails open and advocate for multi-use trail rights. So you're not only buying from a company, but you're actually voting with your dollar when you buy with Slavens. So go check them out, slavensracing.com. My preferred retailer. Bulletproof Designs. Bulletproof Designs are all billet aluminum, made in the USA, Haas certified billet aluminum protection equipment for your dirt bike. I don't really like working on bikes. I don't like changing broken radiators and switching brake rotors, which is why I run the bulletproof shark fin, the radiator guards. It's just a no-brainer for me. It takes the thought out of it. I don't have to break my bike. I can work on it less. I put them on once and I ride that thing. Also, they have a warranty. So if you break your stuff, you can send it back to them and they'll send you a new one. Thanks a lot, Bulletproof. They've been a huge part of my program the last few years. Onyx Off-Road. Onyx Off-Road is my preferred GPS navigation app. My favorite part about Onyx Off-Road is with the Premier membership, you can actually see the terrain in 3D, which has been an absolute game changer for navigating these mountains that we're riding, especially for the Hard Enduro series. And late at night, when I'm done with my day, I've made my list for the next day, I find myself, I'll go on Onyx and I'll just do a little exploring in the mountain off my couch. And I'll be looking for Indian ruins, looking at the curvature of the mountains and seeing how I can get to certain places. So it's really like opened up my ability to adventure. Absolutely loving the Onyx app. So enter code MAX15, MAX15 if you want a discount on a Premier membership with Onyx. Plus Tires. Plus Tires Plus Tires are a new company, a new tire company out of the UK. Their mission and their goal is to make the highest quality, highest performing race proven tires for racers at an affordable price. I've been loving these tires, especially for hard enduro. They're tough one. A sticky tire is absolutely incredible. Only good things to say about these tires. Give one of them a try. If you feel like it, you can get them at slavensracing.com. that's really it. Thanks for listening to these sponsors. Like I said, this is what keeps the train rolling, baby. And also, you might notice this little hat right here. And if you want some Max Off-Road Limited Edition ISDE merch, head on over to the website, maxoffroad.com, maxoff-road.com to get limited edition merch. And there's also a chance to win my 250 ISDE practice bike on there, which I'll be giving away after the 6 days event. So if you're interested in winning a dirt bike, or just you want to just rock some cool apparel, head on over to the website and check it out. Thank you guys for listening to these advertisements, and let's get in to the podcast. Okay, we're rolling. So we welcome Rodney Smith. Thank you for making the time for being here.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing this for a while.
Yeah, for sure. And we were just chatting, and I was looking at looks like you have like a museum shop, and I saw some of your 6 days helmets and some of your medals and stuff. And you were just telling me about the first time that you went to 6 days.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I was coming off my motocross career, of course, and I was up in Northern California, and Dave Bertram was a big part of the 6 days team and stuff at that time. I was kind of overseeing Suzuki at the moment, and he'd called me up and says, "Hey, what do you think about doing 6 days?" Well, I back up just a little bit. I think a little bit that year in '92, I went and did some off-road races. I did a couple of qualifiers for fun. I won the Virginia City Grand Prix off-road race, which was something that my brother and my dad always wanted to do, And so when I retired from motocross, I was talking to my dad. I'm like, "Hey, let's go do that Virginia City race you wanted to do, And so we went up and did that, and I won it, overbeat Larry Rossler, and I think I turned around, went to Minden, and did a 2-day qualifier for 6 days, and won that. And then I think I went to Oregon and won Trask. And then Dave Bertram called me up and goes, "Hey, what do you think about being on the 6-day team?" And I said, "I don't know, I've never done it, but it's interesting, we could talk about it." And so he says, "Well, first of all, I got to talk AMA into putting you on the team because they don't like any motocrossers, being on the 6-day team at that time." And so it took quite a bit of talking with Dave. I actually think I went to Brazil for vacation or something. Told him, "Hey, if you get me on the team, call me. I'll come right back home and get ready." And Dave said he'd have a bike for me. He'd prep it and get a bike ready for me. I could ride one of his Suzuki's. So he calls me up and says, "Hey, good news. You're on the team. We got you going, but you're in the 500 class." He goes, "So we're going to take a 250 RM and bore it out to a 300, and you're going to ride the open class in 6 days." I said, "Well, okay, but I just want to ride a 250. So don't bore it out. I wasn't real big on, project bikes and boring them out and this and that. They're not made to be a 300, So we left it at 250. We had graphics made up saying that it was a 300 and just prayed that we didn't get protested. And Dave was going to be, the whole thing was Dave was at the end of his career. He'd done a bunch of 6 days, and the whole deal was he would be my chase rider, and he would work, talk me through it and explain everything, and, just help me out through the whole 6-day thing. And so we had a good plan going. He wanted me to do a couple more qualifiers before we went, which I remember being here in Idaho. I came up here and did this one. It was the first time I ever changed a tire on Saturday night after riding all day. And it's pretty funny because as confident and good as I was at changing a tire, Max, and hopefully you've already done this too, is I'll never forget, day one, I won all the tests. I'm leading the race, come in on day one, and the whole day, all I could think about was I have 10 minutes to change 2 tires. And fuck, if I screw up, you're going to lose the race, right? So I just remember how much pressure there was. I was very glad that I got my first one out of the way and did it, at a local race. But I just remember being nervous and pressure and just being under the clock, it was really crazy. I did it. Everything was great, but I just remember how nervous I was. So now fast forward, I win that qualifier. I think I won 4 of them that year before I went to 6 days. I went to Australia. We get down there. Dave Bertram's going to be the head guy for the AMA team, and he's going to ride the course, a couple of days prior to the event with all the other teams. Every team gets one rider to ride the event and check out the times and what the course is all about. And he crashes and breaks his wrist really bad. So bad that they had to put him on a plane and send him back to America to get it operated on.
Brutal.
And I had brought along a friend of mine, this guy Craig Watts, that was a fireman. He rode bikes and stuff, but he'd never been to any kind of racing, and me and him had ridden together and stuff up in the mountains in Northern California. But so he just wanted to come along and was, a guest. Well, guess what? He's now going to be my chase rider. So here we have 2 rookies. We don't know what we're doing. The last words that Dave Bertram had told me was follow what one of the guys was on my minute was Sven Erik Johansson. And he was a Swede, and he was a 2 or 3 time 6-day champ.
Wow.
He was kind of older, but Dave just says, do whatever he does. The guy's smart. He's, a real good, clever rider. He says, just follow and do what he does. Okay. That was the last thing I heard. And I'll never forget my day one experience. I had this, there's 3 of us to a minute. It was pretty dusty down there in Australia. And of course I ride pretty good in the dust conditions, but we would we would ride, and Swinner Johansson was very cool. He was a cool dude. He knew all about, he'd go, hey, he'd tell me, hey, we got plenty of time between here and the next check. He'd be like 6 minutes. He said, we just got to cruise. He goes, and this other guy that I met was kind of like, I don't want to say a jerk, but he was young and he was aggressive, and he would take off first every time and dust me and the other guy out. And, so we just kind of socialize with him and just let him do his thing. And me and Swin Eric would just kind of take turns, running second and staying out of the dust. And when we get to the test, I would try to key off of him or the guy in front of me, and if they'd start us 30 seconds apart, I would try to see if I could catch up a little bit, and make up some time, and just, that's kind of how I judged how I was doing. And it was kind of funny because I think we had 6 tests that day, and I never really felt like I gained much on them. I mean, it seemed like maybe a little bit here or there, but I remember in my whole words going, God dang, these guys down here, the Europeans are fast. I was like, man, if these 2 guys on my minute are this good, what are the fast guys like, And so I was kind of like bothered about it and kind of like nervous and didn't really know what to expect. And it was kind of funny after day 1, we finished day 1, we get impounded, get everything done good. And tests come out, or the results come out. And the 3 of us were 1, 2, 3 overall.
Wow.
My minute was that first, second, and third overall. So it was pretty cool. That kind of made me relax a little bit. And me and Giovanni Sala battled out the whole week. I mean, he would win a test, I'd win a test. He'd win a test, I'd win a test. I crashed on day 2 and got stuck under my bike. I kind of missed, we were hauling ass down this levee thing, and it turned on me. It had a right-hand turn, and I came in too hot, and I couldn't get stopped. And I was trying, and I still tried to make the turn, tucked the front wheel, and went down. The bike landed on top of me. I couldn't get out from under it. I lost 33 seconds in that test, and I think I lost 6 days by 36 seconds overall.
Oh.
It was a bummer. I mean, that test pretty much threw it away for me. I beat Giovanni by 12 seconds in the final moto. But the whole week was just cool. We battled. I'd win a test, he'd win the test. I'd win the test, he'd win the test. We were 2-3 seconds apart all week long.
And that was your first 6 days in Australia. So how did you?
It was good conditions. It was good trails. It was so for my first one, because I think later in the years, 6 days kind of changed a little bit. It kind of started becoming more transfer sections, and then just all about the tests, more roads and stuff like that. It wasn't so much trail. And I know the guys that are before my generation are going to say the same thing. In their day, it was a lot tougher yet. 6 days, in my opinion, used to be about not who always was the fastest, but how to go fast, preserve your bike. And, the bike's got to last for 6 days also. So if you go super fast on day 1 and 2, but then you don't got no bike left, you just wore it out or whatever, on day 5 and 6, you're going to lose time, So it's kind of, 6 days used to be a challenge of all kinds of different things, preserving the bike, getting through the week, maintaining your trail pace, staying on time on your trail pace. Now it's not about that. Now it's just transfer sections to the test. It's almost like motocross, because you got these tests that you're timed on, and that's what the race comes down to. Back in the old days, it was who could finish. Finishing in 6 days was a challenge in itself. Getting a gold medal, a bronze medal, or silver medal was a whole other story. When I came into it in Australia, it was pretty much, I don't want to say guaranteed my caliber to get a gold medal. If everything goes right, you're going to get a gold. That's easy. Bronze and silver, definitely something went wrong. Nowadays, I mean, everybody stays on time. It's not like you lose route points. It's not like you're riding a lot of trail. I think some are still a little bit kind of old school, but yeah, I don't know.
One that I did in 2011, my first and only 6 days so far in Finland was brutal. It was brutal. And getting the bike and the body to last the whole 6 days, it really was a chore, because it rained all 6 days, or all 5 days.
That was never rain due.
Well, and when they make the times, to get to the time checks, they made it when it was dry and easy, and then it got slick, and then it was like a full-on hard enduro for 5 days. It was the hardest race I've ever done, even to this day. So for this one, I'm preparing. I'm a better rider. I'm a different person and a better racer now. So I'm prepared to go into the red zone like that if I need to, but I'm more focused on having a good ride, having a good performance, keeping the bike together, and staying strong throughout the whole week.
Right. Just ride strong, ride smart. Don't make mistakes. That was one of the biggest things. What I kind of learned too through the career was I really, after Australia, doing so good, coming off my motocross, I was fast, I was sprinting. My next year Suzuki hired me in 93 for full off-road. And so since I was an off-road rider, I just started riding off-road, and be totally honest with you, I got slow. My next 6 days, I was eye-opener, because when I got there, I was about 25, 30 seconds off on the scores on tests. And it took me 3 or 4 days to to get into the routine, get my sprint speed back up. And then I was battling with the guys the last couple of days. I think Ty Davis was struggling with the same thing. But what it did teach me was, so that was 93. In 94, I went back to just pretty much racing motocross and then flying back east and doing off-road racing. In California, West Coast, our best time to ride off-road anyhow was in the winter, January, probably February at the latest. And then through the summer, it's brutal. It's all dusty and dry and slippery. So if you're out riding off road, you're kind of riding in a comfort zone. You're not really pushing. It's dry, slippery. You feel like you're riding like crap. And so in '93, that's all I did. I just rode off road. I went to all the off road parks and just cruising around. You're riding off road. You're climbing hills. You're doing whatever. But I lost that sprint speed. I learned it real quick. In '94, I went back to moto and 2-3 times a week, and then still. I didn't really ride off road too much during the summer because, like I said, it was dry, miserable, and it kind of put me in a mindset that I wasn't riding good. So there was times I just stayed away from the off-road and just went to ride a groomed motocross track that was watered, feel good, put in a couple of good motos, and I'd fly back east to a GCC and do what I had to do. I mean, it's not like you forget how to ride off-road.
Well, and you can only go so fast in public trails too,
Yeah.
because you're worried about a head-on collision. There's other people out here. There could be a hiker. There could be a UTV or a side-by-side coming over the next hill. You can't pin it like you can on the motocross track.
What's funny about that is you always come home thinking you were hauling ass right out in the woods and doing whatever. But you're right. You're always riding with that what if or what's coming around the corners or down tree. You don't realize it because you feel like you're going as fast as you possibly can, which you kind of are, but you're still in a little bit of reserve mode.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't push like you do when you get on a motocross track.
Right. It's like the most you can do is like 85% of your top speed because of these other hazards, and you don't want to plus you're further out, so you don't want to get hurt or have a problem further when you're out in the mountains. Like that's not going to help you.
Correct. It's funny because, after my career, I kind of got into training riders, working with riders and stuff. And it was kind of my motto was the motocross rider I took off-road riding, to teach him how to ride off-road because he was totally he could be the fastest guy on a motocross track. And I'd take the guy to the woods and he'd be like, dude, what happened? Where'd this rider go? He would adapt. The motocross riders seem to adapt to the off-road a little bit quicker than a true just off-road rider. When I take them to a motocross track, they struggle a little bit more because of the jumps and all the air and, and everybody being 110% on the track. So they struggled a little bit more getting into the motocross routine, but it helped out both sides of the fence. A motocross guy can get on a track, ride 2-3 laps, learn the track, and then put in his laps, marks, just laying it down. Riding the same lap after lap after lap, nothing changes, right? Maybe the berm might change a little bit here or there. But you take them into the off-road market, and again, they, like you just said, they don't know what's around the next turn. They don't know if there's ruts. They don't know if there's erosion. They don't know if there's a car coming. They don't know if there's a deer going to jump out in front of them. So they're real cautious, right? And they can't read the terrain because they don't get to practice on it first. So where it helped out the motocross guy in off-road was how to read the terrain, how to be more aware of what's going on, in a motocross track, they can start thinking about, oh, I want to brake a little bit later in this turn. Oh, I want to use the brake here. I want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Off-road, you just got to come natural and quick, So it teaches them how to use the brakes, the clutch, and worry about what's going on around them. It's kind of helps out, a little bit everywhere. And then the motocross for the off-road guy kind of helps bring in that intensity,
Totally.
More sprint speed and how to be a little bit more aggressive, so they all learn a little bit from both angles.
When you went to Australia and you had a really strong ride at your first ISE, that's an impressive ride. How did you obviously had a background in off-road and motocross, but it sounded like mainly motocross was your background at that time.
What?
And my question is, how did you adapt and figure out that European style of racing so quickly? Because the whole thing is the Europeans, they race like this all year round. This is their type of racing. It's super intense. The grass tracks are different. So how did you adapt and apply your speed in a completely different modality than what you were used to?
Well, it goes back to a couple of things, I think. And a lot of it we just kind of touched bases on was when I did my first 6 days, I was coming off a motocross career and I was living in Europe racing GP motocross. So I kind of knew the European style, the races, the motocross tracks, the grass tracks, kind of similar. But the key to that, what you just said was, I'm coming off my motocross career. I'm fast. I'm sprinting all the time. And I went into 6 days in Australia. And I was, growing up, my parents rode off-road. I was kind of an off-road guy before I got into motocross.
Mm-hmm. So you had a little foundation there.
My dad rode enduros. I rode a couple enduros with my dad, and so off-road was my kind of background. But when I turned 13, my parents bought me a RM80 and I started riding motocross. And for the next couple of years, we did a little bit of off-road riding on the weekends, but mainly motocross, But that's something that Dave Bertram knew. Dave Bertram knew that I came from an off-road family. He knew that I knew how to work on my bike. He knew that I knew how to ride trails and I wasn't just a crazy motocross kid, So that's because me and Dave kind of opened the door for motocrossers to be on the 6th team because AMA was totally against it. And it took a lot of work and a lot of talking for Dave to get AMA to trust it and then put me on the team. But going back to that, so the second year when I went back and did the second 6 days, I thought I was prepared. I was all ready to do it. I thought I was one of the top guys because I coming off, Australia so good. And I didn't realize it, but I'd lost my sprint speed. You know, you don't realize it unless you're putting a clock on yourself, I guess, every time. You feel like you're going fast still. But that little bit of that edge, you know, where you're pushing and but I was comfortable back then. And then, you know, you just you lose a few seconds, you know? And so I think the biggest thing is if I was to tell somebody that's going to 6 days what they need to work on is go out and time yourself, set up a course, set up a test, and just do sprint laps, one lap, you know, and sprint it. Because if, you know, I was riding kind of in my comfort zone. And like I said, I was 15, 20, 25 seconds off on each test the first couple of days of my next.
Wow.
And it was an eye opener. And that's where I said, man, I got to go back to motocross roots where you get on a track and you push harder, you know, and start sprinting. So that is kind of what before the next 6 days and stuff like that, you know. I mean, when was the last time you rode at 110% for 5 minutes, you know, and pushed and then turned around and did it again and timed yourself and did it again? That's what 6 days is.
Totally.
And not making mistakes at that speed. You know, we get over there and we try to go as fast as they're going, but we're not comfortable at it. We're making a mistake here, a little mistake there. You dab your foot, you tuck the front end, you know, you're losing 5 seconds here, 6 seconds there. So I think the fact that they're sprinting all the time and they're staying at that pace all the time, 6 days is a brutal, tough sport, right? Like you said, Finland, rain, Mother Nature makes it tough. It's a different toughness. You're on the bike for 6 days. I'm on the bike for 8 to 10 hours a day. It's not, but I'm not racing 110% for 10 hours. You know, you're cruising at 80% riding a trail pace and then sprinting for 5 to 7 minutes on the 5 or 6, 7 tests you do. So it's not really like, I didn't worry so much about my training and my physical going to 6 days. It was more about time on the bike because your neck, your body, you're just out there hitting, you know, and you start getting lazy and tired by day 3 and day 4. It's not that you're not in good shape. It's just wear on the body. The sprint speed, you know, 5, 7 minutes, we were good at that. I didn't have a problem. It was more, we're just getting that, you know, heart rate up and learn how to sprint.
Totally. And learn how to manage that level of intensity, right? Because that level of intensity is like, can be overwhelming if you're not used to it, right? Like,
well,
like racing Endurocross, that intensity is so high. And if you're not conditioned for it, then it's overwhelming and you can't sustain it and you make mistakes and you're not precise, just like what you're saying.
Think about it. An Endurocross main event's what, 10 minutes long, maybe 8 minutes long, and it feels like it's an eternity. It's, you know, it's different.
It goes on forever.
Oh my God, it's crazy. You know, I was racing GNCC, so I was racing for 3 hours at a high intensity, right? People always ask me, you know, you guys pace yourself. And I'm like, well, no, not really. I mean, if I have more in the tank, I'd lay down more in the tank. I go, I'm exhausted at 3 hours at the finish. I put in everything I got. If I had more, I'd have went faster. So it's not like you pace yourself to the 3 hours. It's not like I went slow so I could finish in 3 hours. You're giving everything you have for 3 hours and then you're pretty much done on the podium. You know what I mean?
Exhausted.
Well, it's not a pace. It's whatever you have in the tank. You know, people get kind of misconfirm it like you're kind of cruising and saving yourself. You don't. You're pushing as hard as you can, and giving everything you have, you know, to get to the finish.
That's where fuel in the body is important as well. Like, even if doesn't even have to be perfect, but as long as you have like sugars in the body, I mean, whether it's drinking a Coca-Cola at your pit or having some sort of sports drink, like keeping the body fueled so you don't bonk. For me anyway, it seems like an important part of it.
Yeah, there's a couple of good things I've learned from all that, like you're just touching bases, is like nutrition and everything. And what works for one rider doesn't work for another rider. I've learned that. You got to learn your body. You got to learn what works for you. Study it, test it. I never test. Biggest thing I ever learned from Mark Hyde was you never test anything on a race day. I wouldn't even wear it. If Moose Racing would show up with a brand new set of gear that's the next year's model and they want us to wear it today at the race, I wouldn't do it. I want to wear them. I want to wash them. I want to, you know, make sure they're not sliding up and down on me. I learned not to ever test anything.
Well, because that can make a huge difference. Like even something small, like a new pair of pants, you know, if there's a seam that gets caught on your knee brace where you can't straighten or bend your knee all the way, now that's like a real problem. For 3 hours, you're going to have to deal with that.
But back to the nutrition and you know, each rider is a little bit different, but you're right. One of the things I learned with Josh Strang was, you know, we would be on a routine of vitamins and supplements, you know, and you never really realize how good they're doing for you until you don't have them and you quit taking them. And then you start feeling like a little bit lazy or you don't feel quite as good. Like, well, I don't feel as good this week. Wait, you know, I wasn't taking my vitamins. But when you're on taking them, and you got a good routine going, you don't really notice the benefit you're getting from it.
Yeah, you build up.
You're getting a benefit without you knowing it, which is hard because some people give up. And
what vitamins were you taking?
Shoot, I don't even remember back then. You know, you always have a new company coming out that wants to help you out and sponsor you. Well, my biggest one was I was on Champion Nutrition, which was Cytomax and Muscle Milk. They were real good for me. They were right there in the Bay Area. I became real good friends with them. So we would try different stuff and
Do you take any like supplements though? Like vitamin D or iron or probiotics or like anything like this, like dietary supplements?
I did. I mean, Q10, I remember we used to take back in the early
Yep.
motocross days. What I did really learn, which was huge in GP motocross, I would get tested twice a year. I'd go to a university and they would put me on a machine and they would test my heart rate. They would do blood work first. Basically, you get on this bicycle with a computer all hooked up to it and they would put you through a routine and you basically would pass out and fall off when you were done. I mean, it would take you to your max.
You're testing your VO2 max.
I regretted going every time. It was gnarly, but it would give you a reading after what you're missing and one of the biggest things my body was always missing was iron.
From
And
sweating.
if you're low on iron, you're kind of a little bit lazy.
Oh,
So
you're sluggish.
you're sluggish, right? So that's what iron kind of how it affects you. It's funny because if you look at most multivitamins and stuff on the market, most of them are without iron because I guess most people that don't train or don't work out have a high iron intake already, right? With the food you're getting and stuff. If you're exercising, this is what the professor, told me. And when we were talking about it, I actually had it. I was so low the first time I ever went with Rinaldi that his dad was a doctor and he had to inject iron into my body. And if it
Oh,
goes in
wow.
too quick, you could die. So I remember it took like an hour, 2 hours to inject iron into it. I had to sit there with a needle and he would put a little bit in and we'd
Oh,
sit there.
you are severely deficient.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know it. You wouldn't know it, right?
Well, and once again, right, there's another example of how everybody's different, right? Like if you are taking a multivitamin thinking that you're covering your bases, you might not be because you might be low on iron and this supplement might not even have any iron. So getting your blood tested or something like that it could be beneficial.
Correct, correct. And like I said, if you're out there sweating all the time and you're working out and you're riding, you're probably a person that needs to have a little bit of iron in your intake and vitamin. The average Joe that's sitting on the couch watching TV, working 7 days a week or 5 days a week or whatever,
Right.
probably doesn't need iron. That's why most vitamins, I think, because it's safer to have no iron in it, But athletes and guys that are out sweating need to actually, look for vitamin or some kind of iron supplement. In Europe, you used to be able to buy them at the pharmacies. There was little bottles, iron. It was liquid iron. You just
Mm.
pop off and drink it. I drink one a day. The rule was kind of what he taught me, and it worked good. Was during the season when I'm training, riding, doing everything I'm doing, take iron. When the season ends and it's winter and you're take a little bit of a break, don't just let your body naturally do what it has to do.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so that was kind of a good.
Well, plus you should, if you're eating good quality, high quality red meat, then you should be getting iron through that. You know
I
what I
think you need
mean?
more than that though. If you're
Okay.
sweating, if you're out sweating every day, training and riding like we do, like we are, I mean, you know what I mean?
Especially in Northern California or in Arizona summer when it's hot and you're sweating a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I think you need more than
One
what.
thing one thing we were talking about earlier was just like the sprint speed, between 5 and 10 minutes and just how intense it is and kind of not being overwhelmed. One get preparing for 6 days, I'm kind of not really preparing as much for Endurocross yet. I don't even have my bikes yet.
You gotta get ready.
But I'm all of September. I'm doing a whole Endurocross camp in September. But I'm thinking, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this. All this 6 days training that I'm doing, sprint training, sprint training, sprint training. I think it's only going to benefit me for Endurocross.
Earlier when I said something about Endurocross, the intensity of Endurocross. It made me think about you already got some good sprint speed because that's kind of what it is. You're pushing your heart rate up to, 90, 89, 90, for 5, 6, 7 minutes. You do that already in Endurocross. So it's kind of the same. So it kind of crosses over. You should be okay.
I think it'll benefit me, especially just like with the speed and the intensity and all that. I mean, ripping corners, like I think it'll only help me and condition my body to that sprint speed even more. I think I've been riding logs and rocks and technical stuff since forever, so that's probably my strong suit. And I think just being able to maintain that intensity is probably where I could use the most work. So I'm actually really excited for Endurocross this year as well. Throughout this whole 6 days training process, I'm getting excited for 6 days, but I'm also like, damn, I'm feeling good on the bike and strong. Like I'm excited for Endurocross
I'm
later
excited
on
too. We
too.
got our first win last year.
I know, and we ended on it, so we got to go pick up where we left off.
But back all this whole conversation has been kind of, your first question was preparing for 6 days and why do the Europeans do a little bit better than us? And we've always said because they race like that all year long, which is true. We're racing 3 hours long. We're doing hare and hound type racing. You're doing Endurocross. So Americans are kind of spread out doing all different types of off-road racing, and we don't get to stay in that same routine where we're sprinting all year long. You know what I mean? So those Europeans, they get to stay in the same routine. It's the same thing. When they go to 6 days, they're not preparing any different. You know what I mean? When we get ready for 6 days, we're changing our whole program.
Totally.
And we got to worry about setting up the bike. We don't even run with brake lights and headlights and taillights, on our off-road racing. But now we got to have all that stuff. It's just, and they don't have to. They don't. Their fanny pack's already packed because they have a fanny pack with all the tools in it. I never even ran a fanny pack in America. And then when I went to 6 days, I had to wear this fanny pack, and I don't even know what tools I have. And so we're preparing for a whole different world. And it's the same routine for them.
Totally.
You know what I mean? They just throw the same gear bag back in the truck this week, and now it's 6 days. Next week, it's a 2-day qualifier for them or whatever. Back in the early days when I first got into off-road, we had a American 6-day championship here, and it was a 2-day qualifier. And it was kind of to prepare for, and that's how we pulled the team that would go, to pick the riders that would go ride 6 days and stuff like that back then. It was one of my favorite championships, actually, and it kind of just went away. It's hard because a lot of the people that ride off-road in 6 days are the average working guy, so he couldn't travel all over the United States.
Well, now there's the U.S. Sprint Enduro Series, which seems like that's kind of what has taken that series place.
Right. They kind of found a way to judge the riders to pick the team. It's because they're doing just sprints, Again, though, it's more of a local series. It's all back east, or there's one out west. It's not like this. The qualifier series back when I was racing and when I first got into off road was kind of cool. They'd have 3 or 4 out west, 3 or 4 out east, and a couple in the middle. So it was a national series. It wasn't just a local series. We would do Trask, Oregon. We would do Minden, Nevada. We would do Loretta Lynn's, Tennessee. We would do Pennsylvania, New York, Indiana. Ohio had one.
So you would do that on top of GNCC racing and doing ISDE?
Actually, before I did GNCCs, I did that in National Hare Scrambles. I didn't start doing GNCCs until about 96, 97, I think. I did.
And when you were doing Hare Scrambles, like now it's a West Coast Regional Championship. Was it a national back then?
Yeah, it was a national series back then. I don't want to say we kind of ruined it a little bit, maybe. I don't know. It was big, Scott Summers, Scott Plessinger, all the East Coast riders that rode GNCCs rode the Hare Scramble series also. And when I got into off-road in 93 was my first year with Suzuki, we did the Hare Scramble series and the qualifier series. And I think I won the Hare Scramble series my first year. But what was cool about the National Hare Scramble series is it was 9 race series championship, 3 on the West, 3 Central, and 3 Eastern. So it was the whole United States, right? So out West, it was faster. The terrain is a little bit faster, more open. In the middle, the country was more rocky and challenging, and East Coast was more trees and roots, right? So whoever was the best of all type of conditions would be the champion, which I thought was kind of cool. It wasn't just in the same region, you get the one guy.
Yep.
ENCCs, don't get me wrong, but they're all within like a 9-hour area, right?
Totally. They're all on the East
Coast. They all
Coast.
become the same routine again, like the Europeans. So when the Europeans come over here and race GNCC, they struggle for a while because it's new to them. And we're used to it. It's ours. It's the same thing. I do think we would do a lot better at 6 days if we were doing the same thing every week, week in and week out, for sure. It would make it easier. We would know how to prep our bikes better. We would know what to carry in our fanny bag, what tools. It would just be more of a routine for us.
Totally.
I mean, sure, we've had some success now in 6 days.
Yeah, I mean, our guys have been killing it. We have really strong riders, and that Sprint Enduro series is the closest thing that we have to 6 days like racing. So I think that's really pushing our team, the U.S. team, to be better when we get there. It's not such a foreign modality to us when we get there. It's like, oh, I have a little bit better understanding. And that's why I earlier this year when I went and did that one on the East Coast, that's what I wanted to go do. I wanted to learn what it was about. I wanted to get the feeling of it. I wanted to see where what I needed to work on. I wanted to learn. It was like I wanted to get a gauge on where I was at, and I learned that I needed to build speed in the grass tracks.
And again, like we were saying, those guys are racing that type of racing every weekend over there. That's their format. So they have grass tracks. When you go to the race, it's a set up grass track, right? Where do you get to go do a grass track that's laid out for you? There's not.
No. Well, actually, it's funny that you asked that because I'm up here in Idaho now, and I reached out to on the Facebook community page, and I was like, hey community, here's what I'm doing. I'm going to 6 days. I explained what it was just a little bit, and I said, I'm looking for grass fields. Anybody that has any grass fields or anything like that, I need to put in some tracks. And a whole bunch of people reached out to me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's still hard to go out there and lay it out like it's supposed to be with.
Oh, dude. Oh, yeah. I went out there and
you can go make a grass track, but you can't push because you don't have a real corner marker. You're just kind of riding your same lines.
Well, I put in.
My point is, the Europeans get to race that course every weekend.
Absolutely.
And we don't get to. symbolize it. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
not, it's harder for us.
Totally.
Sure, we go out and
Totally.
lay out, you know, ride a grass track or ride a field and lay something out in there, but it's still not legit.
No, I mowed it, wide, and then I put in stakes, and I put up ribbon. So I tried to
Nice.
make it as realistic as I can.
Yeah.
I've been putting in a lot of laps, and it's gotten really beat, which has been good. I think that's one thing that, I need to prepare for mentally is how beat the tracks are going to be when I get to them. Because I think that every time I'm in a test section, they're going to be more beat than the tracks that I've been training on. So I just need to be ready for that.
Not only that, but for like, you know, the top guys are more up in the front of the
Right.
system,
I'll be in
right?
the back.
Right. So it'd be a little bit different. Like when I was racing, I was on the 6-day team, so I was more up front. So when we would hit the grass track, it would be smooth and fast.
Right.
Well, the next time we come through on the second loop, there's been 1,000 riders through there. So
Choppy.
the difference, we're not, you have to be expecting that or know how to adapt to that, right? So you're just
Totally.
it's gonna be kind of rough and choppy a little bit for your first time through, and it's just gonna be a little bit more the second time. You already kind of have an idea what it's gonna be like. We
Yep.
don't get to see that when we were up front, you know. It
So
was smooth
I'll be
and
better for the
all
second time through that same test.
right, where it was an eye opener for us the second time. There was ruts and bumps and shit that we didn't even see the first time through it. So it's all that type of adapting to different conditions. 6 days is a different sport. It's cool.
Well, and being aware of it going into it, I think is a really important piece of it, right? Like when I come into the first test, first day, like think about what has gone on in that test and think about what it might be like. Okay, there's been 600 riders through here. It's going to be beat, but it's not going to be too beat. So let's go fast. Let's find the good lines. Let's stick to the plan. And then, that maybe on day 5 or 4, when I come back to that same test, like, all right, this test is going to be absolutely beat. So why don't we, maybe take a little bit more time on the entry of the corner, swoop wide, and then cut in or something like that. Adapt to it.
I always tried to make my lines. I was always good at picking lines, actually, but I would always try to do opposite. I think about what the average guy's where he's at, and I try to do opposite.
Totally.
It's kind of weird to explain, I guess, but like if they'd make the same turn, I would kind of go in just a little bit and cross theirs and not
Yep.
hit coming out. I try to be just different. But me and you talked a little bit yesterday about some things.
The hard part about that though is you're racing the best in the world. None of that. Nobody there is an average rider. Everybody's good.
Correct, but if you can pick a different line and get smoother, like you said, slow down a little bit to change your line just a little bit to not do the same thing that everybody else is doing, it's going to be smoother and faster.
Right.
But
You're going to be accelerating in the smooth stuff where they're going to be in the chop.
Pushing and you're in the same line everybody else is in, and you can't cut in just a little bit, or you can't do this or that because you're committed and everybody's hitting the same thing. Pushing
wide in the chop.
Right. So if you can kind of think a little bit more out of the box and just be a little bit smoother and pick good lines, you can go faster than, Jet Lawrence does the same thing,
And that's sometimes where like going from 110%, backing it down to 95% or 90% can benefit you, because then you have a little bit more time to see.
Yep.
You can pick your lines a little bit better, going a little bit slower to go faster.
Yeah. Sometimes going slower makes faster. We were talking a little bit yesterday about 6 days. Also, some stuff, Max, I think it's important to everybody, is not only are you preparing and sprinting and doing all the tests and trying to do everything right, 6 days is also about being prepared, bike and physical and mentally. Mentally, I think is the biggest part of the 6 days. You got to stay mentally focused, even though you're not pushing 110% on the bike, but also, you have to realize, like, because usually you do 2 loops of the same, right? So the first loop through, if you have 6, 7, 8 minutes at a check, you got to start thinking, okay, it's day 3. If I get back to this check and I change a rear sprocket, I won't have to do a rear sprocket or a chain again the rest of the week, even if it rains every day. So even though I don't need a rear sprocket or a chain right now, if I got time and the conditions are good and I got 8, 10 minutes to spare to check, I'm not just going to sit there. I'm going to change, I'm going to think about, okay, if I change out a clutch today, I want to change out a clutch the rest of the week. If it's day 3, day 4, you got to start mentally thinking, because you know how it is. The first 2 days could be bitching at 6 days, and all of a sudden the weather turns, and now it's just full survival. And if you're not prepared for that, if you're going into that with a kind of half wore out clutch already, God, you're just behind the 8 ball.
Totally.
So if you got time and you got to change out a clutch, one clutch for the week, find out when you can do it and start planning. You got to think about, you got to plan everything out and just be ready for it.
Be ready for it. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you can get bike work in at the checks and not in your bike work time, then you're getting ahead of the game.
You want to save that 10 minutes of the night to change tires. So if you can do other maintenance during the day and get that out of the way, that's what you got. You want to do that too. You can come into the check and say, okay, you got 8 minutes at this check. Shoot. Hey guys, next lap through, when I get here, be ready. I'm going to do a clutch. So I'm going to need these tools ready, and they'll have stuff ready for you, which helps out too. So it's all
I only
about
sent one clutch over there I only sent one clutch.
You're right.
I don't know if I'm not predicting that I'm gonna need to change a chain, a sprocket, or a clutch because I've been running my practice bike. I'm not super hard on clutches
No, I didn't
typically.
have to change clutch usually, unless it just was 6 days of mud.
Yeah, and if it's brutal and I'm like doing a lot of run, then I'll do it. But I think if it's like, standard
But
conditions, I don't
see,
think I'm
again,
gonna
you've
need
got to
to.
realize that you're the only one that knows it. You're out there on the bike. You know if you abuse the clutch. You know if you're going to need a mechanic or your dad or somebody can't tell you that because they don't know what the. So
Well,
when
and
you're only riding and trying to go as fast as you can, the 6 days is about everything. It's about being mentally, and thinking about, okay, shit, I'm kind of wearing out the clutch. Maybe I should change it. Only you know.
or maybe I should change my oil at
Correct.
this test
The
and keep
biggest
my
thing,
oil fresh.
the biggest thing, if I didn't need to change a chain, you should change a master link. Because
Mm.
because with the newer chain guides and stuff today, if you keep an eye that it'll wear the pins, you won't know it, and then the clip will just fall off. So it's good to day 3 change out a master link.
That happened to me in Finland in 2011. I changed like 7 or 8 master links because
Yeah.
I bent my chain guide in just a little bit because I just ran a stock one. I rented a KTM and I bent it in and it was rubbing it down and I had to keep an eye on it because I didn't have time to bend it back. So I just
Right.
had to keep an eye on it. I just kept replacing master links in the middle of the race, whenever I could, and ended up never dropping a minute. So I did exactly what you're saying, just change them whenever you have a time. But I remember that being a real stressor, it was an extra challenge for sure.
Yeah. Usually clutches and rear sprocket took me the longest, so I kind of want to have a game plan when I need to change those if I needed to. If conditions like my first year in Australia, they were so good. It was just hot and dusty every day, so it didn't really do much damage to the bike. So I wasn't changing sprockets and stuff. But you go to Finland or Holland or something like that where it's raining, it's sandy, it's gritty, again, being prepared, knowing where you're going, knowing what the conditions are going to be like. You prepare differently.
Have you ever raced in Bergamo, Italy?
Yes.
Okay.
Motocross.
Motocross.
Well, we might have done 6 days there.
You might have what
Actually, I believe we did.
you may have because they had it there like back in the 90s, I think.
As funny as I don't remember most of the courses I've been to or where I've raced at in different countries, because I've raced in over 50 countries. Bergamo sounds familiar. Like I think I did do 6 days in Italy.
It's like near Milan, sort of. You fly into Milan, probably.
Yeah, because I lived in Italy doing motocross. So
Oh,
when we went there, it was Bergamo. I'm 100% sure. I drove some of my teammates over to show them where I used to live over by Rinaldi.
oh, that's cool.
I lived in Parma, which is kind of by Bologna and Milan.
Where'd you live?
Parma?
Parma.
These comes
Oh,
from.
I've heard of that. I want to go check it out. Yeah, I'm just curious to see if you remember what it was like, but
Hard pack, but you can guarantee it's going to be hard, slippery.
hard and slippery. And rocks?
I don't remember a lot of raw. I just remember hard pack, super dry hard pack.
Okay, that's good for me. Hard pack is good for me. One thing I wanted to ask you, you talked about a little bit earlier, and I wanted to ask you about is they wanted to put you in the open class on a board out 250 on a 300. You're like, no, just leave the 250. What's your current perspective on 250 two-stroke versus 300 two-stroke?
Well, if a 300 two-stroke was built to be a 300 two-stroke, I'm all over. I'm just not a big believer of taking a 125 and making it a 150 because you're basically taking a bike that's not supposed to be a 150 and you didn't change, you just bore it out, right? They're just going to bore it out and put a bigger piston in it. You didn't really change the pipe. You didn't map it differently. You didn't put a different ignition on it. You didn't change carburetor. I mean, 150 is built to be a 150.
And now your cylinder's thinner, so you don't have as much heat displacement.
So if the bike's meant to be a 300, then I'm all over. But to take a 300 and make it a 350 or 400, to me, sometimes it's hit or miss. I actually, back in the day, took a 125 Suzuki and made it a 150 because everybody was making, 125s, 150s back then. And I had a 125 that was better, that ran faster. It's just kind of hit or miss. Is it going to work? Could. What pipe you using? What sounds are you using? You got to find the combination that works for sure. But it's not always just bigger is better. You can't just
Totally.
ports are different. It's just different. And then I didn't know what the reliability would be like on that. And I was just like, go ride it. I go, no, just leave it at 250. But I don't know. I knew 250 was good.
I've been running the 250. I'm running the 250 at 6 days, which the other reason I'm running a 250 is because I'll be in the 250 class. So I'll be 250 two-stroke, 250 four-stroke. And we actually start, I'm on a club team, so we start before the 350, 450s and the open class, but behind all the trophy riders and all that. So I'm pretty far back, but that's the other reason I chose to ride at 250 was so I could start further forward on day one.
Yeah, you're pretty far back, but you're not as far as you. So you could be sitting in a good position.
Totally.
Because being too close up front, it's not burned in. So it's hard to, because I like to race the track, but I follow the lines. I mean, I race the track, right? So if the track's not burnt in, it's hard to read it. And
Totally.
So if you're back just a little bit and if it starts raining or whatever, you could be in a good spot.
Yep. Yeah, because if there's a inside line,
You
you
don't want
could
to be too far back.
you know what wide is because you have a reference of that main line.
Grass tracks, like we're talking about grass tracks. We get over there, the grass is a foot tall. There's not even a line in it. And by the second time you come through it, it's a burned-in race course. It's totally different.
And you never know if there's a rock hiding or something like that. What was your experience like walking the tests, and how important do you think that is? And how do you have any advice for me on walking the test the week before?
I think it comes to you. You're asking the wrong guy, kind of. I was the guy that at GNCCs, everybody walks the 10-mile course before the race. And I hated that. I mean, I was better at just racing. Like I said, we just talked about it. I don't remember the places I raced at. I don't remember what the tracks were like until I get there. Sometimes when I started racing GNCC, I think it was like the third year before I'd go, oh, I've raced here before. I'm more of a rider that doesn't want to worry about. I just race when I get on the track. I can race corner to corner. I was kind of the laughing stock at the GNCCs because Jeff Russell would find me and Mike Webb walking the course. He goes, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're walking the course. Because me and Mike hadn't seen each other for a couple of weeks. And we'd get there and we'd go out and start hiking. And we'd just start talking. We're not even looking at the course. We're just talking, right? And Jeff Russell caught us one time, like I just said, and he goes, you guys are going backwards. And we're like, oh, we are? Huh, okay. Which way's the trucks? We just walked back to the truck. We didn't care. There's so many times I didn't walk the GCC course and I'd be leading the race the first lap on the next day. And I'm like, dude, what are you guys following me for? I haven't even walked it. You guys did, but I'd be the one controlling the race. I wasn't. Sometimes I'd walk the course and I would stress about it. I'd see a section going, oh my God, this is going to do this. This mud hole is going to get like this. And I'd lose sleep overnight of it. And then during the race, about the third lap, I go, man, where was that mud hole I was worried about? It's totally different, So I liked to see what direction it was going. I might go just kind of get a basic idea. So for 6 days, I can't remember every corner, but I might go walk a little bit of the test just to kind of get a feel for, like, is there a lot of rocks? How's it laid out? What are the turns flow? How it flows, and get a kind of a direction of it. And then I'm good to go. I don't need to waste a lot of energy out there trying to learn each test and figure it out because I'm not going to remember it.
So you don't get too in the weeds, because there's another mentality that says go out there, walk the test, try to remember every single test, make notes on every single test, burn it into your brain. Huh?
There's some riders that do that. It just don't work for me. I remember one time we were in Ohio and it was a 2-day qualifier and they had you showed up in this field, right? And all you seen was ribbon, right? I mean, it was a grass track laid out in this big green field on a hillside.
Yep.
And I saw more ribbon. I did grass almost. I'm like, holy crap. And we started walking it and it was like, so like left, right, left, and kind of tight. And I remember Steve Hatch had a pit board and he's walking it and he's drawing it out. And I looked at him and I go, what the hell are you going to do with that thing? And he's going, oh, I'm going to take it back to the hotel room and remember it. And I'm like, dude, I would remember about the first 3 corners and that's it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to remember left, right, 200 yards, front, right. I just spend more time in my head thinking about all that than racing. I can just get on the track and go faster. Like I said, I'll read the course. I like to know where the first corner's a left, the next one's a right, and then kind of a left. Okay, I'm good to go. Because after that, I'm not going to remember anyhow, right? But once I get on a flow, I get on a flow. I'm not saying that works for everybody. Like I said, Steve Hatch was a good he could figure it out. He could remember corners. He could remember it. It worked for him. So I was just more of, I really didn't want to know. I just kind of want to know a little bit about.
It's crazy to see the contrast between, like, I just talked with Steve yesterday, and that's exactly what he was saying. He's like, draw it out, make notes, memorize it. He was saying that's what he did, and that's what worked for him.
Right. And it did. Like I said, I'm not saying nothing wrong.
Right. Right. But like you said, it's just about you as a rider. And for me, I think that I'm probably somewhere in between, because for me, like, reading the terrain is really important to me, and searching and looking ahead. And sometimes if I walk the courses, sometimes my mind isn't really in that reading the terrain, searching ahead for my line mode. It can be more in the, like, let's look for the line that I planned on riding. And then I'm riding a little bit more tight and I'm not reading the terrain as much. So for me, there's definitely a balance there of, like, knowing the tests, seeing which direction they go. If there's a big drop off, if there's a big feature that I need to remember, or there's something where it's like, oh, definitely hang to the right here so I can sweep in. Remember some of the important stuff, but if I get too in the weeds, like you said, I can get then I'm just looking for my line instead of reading the terrain.
Right. No, I get totally 100%. I was also a good rider. It's hard to explain, but even when you're out trail riding, or even, at a GNCC, or when I'm riding wherever I'm riding, you kind of get a feeling for the area you're in. Like you said, you want to walk the test just to kind of get a feeling for if it's real rocky, if it's real rooty, if it's real tight in the woods, and even when it was funny because I'd be in Oklahoma or whatever, and I'd be hauling ass, and all of a sudden you come into an area where it's a lot of rocks hidden in the grass, and you kind of, you already know what's coming ahead of you. And then all of a sudden you're out in the open, tight woods, and you feel it. You know you feel the terrain that you're in when I'm riding, it's hard to explain. It's just stuff comes naturally to you. It's like, and you might come across 3 or 4 different types of terrain while you're riding, GNCCs for me, just like you said, I'd walk the course, maybe the whole course, maybe most of it. I wanted to know if it was more of a clockwise type course.
Yes.
If it was a counterclockwise type course. If it was, tighter. I wanted to have a little bit of an idea of it in my mind so that on the race, when I'm doing a lap, I kind of knew where I was at. You know what I mean? In the course. I didn't want to
just knowing the direction of it so you know which way it's going to fade.
One the layout. So you kind of know if it goes out here for 3 miles, it comes back to this area, out here for 2. So then during the race, I kind of know where I'm at or what it's doing, I don't try to remember every inch of the course or every corner or every detail. I do want to have a little bit of a layout of the course in my mind.
Because it's a big part of the 6 days. I mean, I'm getting there a week early. Everybody gets there at least a week early, and they walk all the test sections.
And by the time I walked day 1's test, and by the time I got done with day 6, I forgot what day 1 was.
Totally.
I've done it. I've been there. I think I don't want to say a big waste of time, but sometimes I think a lot of it's a waste of time.
Interesting. Well, that's really good insight.
Again, I like to go see the tests. I want to kind of have an idea of them, where they're at, what they do, fast, flowy, tighter, technical, get a little bit of an idea like that, but I can't remember every left, right.
Right.
I mean, that's...
Yeah, it's like, there's rocks in the grass. So if you get outside the main line, expect rock. There's not rocks in the grass, so we can pin it in the grass, like just stuff like that.
Correct. And again, like you said, we were talking about the Europeans having a little bit of an advantage of us because they do that type of racing every weekend. Same thing. They've raced there before. They know the place. I guarantee you they've been there.
Totally.
So they already have an idea what everything is more than we do,
Yep. 100%. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned as a professional racer?
Kind of do what works best for me and not follow others. I think each rider, if you want to be a champion, you don't try to duplicate what someone else is doing. You kind of, if you're going to duplicate them, you're only going to do as good as them. And if you want to beat them, you got to come up with your own strategy. Right? I didn't so much let other people get into my mind. I kind of did what worked for me. I think that's important. I think you be your own. I think me and you had a little bit of this talk one day. We were talking about riders and training, and a good example is Steve Hatch. He had to train twice as hard as me because of his riding style at a GNCC to finish the 3-hour race. Right. I didn't have to train half as hard as him because I had a more smooth, flowy type style. I didn't use as much energy. So we're just 2 different riders, right? So if I was trying to do what he was doing, I'd way overtrain myself and I wouldn't be focusing on racing as much. It wouldn't work for me. So riders got to figure out themselves, their body, their nutrition, what works for them. Running 5 miles a day or not running 5 miles a day. You figure out what works for you and don't worry about, I think surrounding yourself with good people is probably the most important thing. If you surround yourself with bad people or negative that always draw you down, I remember it was tough when I was in Brazil. The first year I went to Brazil, I went down there with Kenny Keelan, and Kenny was freaking, bitchin' rider to watch. He was just flashy, style, kind of, I don't want to say out of control, but just hammered everything, berms, dirt flying. I'd watch his practice and go, oh my God, he's hauling ass today. And I'd go out in my practice, I felt like I was just a slug, and come in and they go, oh, you're 2 seconds faster. Because I didn't feel or see it because I'm smooth and not flashy, and I wasn't and nobody talked about me, right? Except my group around me would go, oh my God, you were so smooth here, you did this right, you're going through here right. And I go, really? Because I didn't feel like I was as fast as him because I watched him, God, dirt's flying, feet off the pegs and hammering through the whoops. And it was just, you can get yourself in a wrong mood, right? So surrounding yourself with good people, even when you're down, good people can bring you up. If you're down and you're hanging around bad people, you're just going to go further down, right? Hang around good, positive people, I think, is very important in your life. Surround yourself with good people.
That's a really good one. Like, the old saying, you're only as good as you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
True. That's exactly right.
Something like that, which is why it's so important to have good mentors and people that you can reach out to and just talk with. And, I think through talking with guys like yourself, Steve, other mentors and people that I've had, been around, that's another way to learn more about yourself. because it's like talking to you, you don't really walk test. Talking to Steve, he obsessively walks the test. And then it's like, oh, okay. So like there can be a difference there and you can both be successful. So like, okay, well, what am I better at? My strength is reading terrain. That's my strength, is reading terrain. 100%. I grew up riding in the mountains. You know, is my memory my strength? Remembering every turn? Probably not my strength.
It blows me away. I'll be talking to my dad. My dad will know every track that we raced at and how to get there and what each one's about. And I'm like, Dad, I don't even remember that. And I raced it. I mean, it's crazy. I just think I block some of that stuff out and only focus on what I focus on. And it goes back to the very beginning where us talking. No two riders are alike. Do your own thing, what works for you. Lapoto didn't ride like McGrath did, you know, and they're both champions. Well, who's right or wrong? Even when I was working with riders and helping riders out, when you get a rider that's 16, 17, 18, and you start working with them, you're not going to change their style. They've already adapted their style. You can work with their style. I'm not going to tell them they have to ride like this. You got to ride with your elbows up. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to run your handlebars here. No, Villapoto had his handlebars down. McGrath had them up. You work with your strengths and you can maybe work with a little bit of things they're doing wrong or whatever. You can't change their style. I'm more of a sit-down rider. Shane Watts was a stand-up rider. No, there's no right or wrong. Work with what your style is and perform it or perfect it.
Yeah, that's a good point too, especially in today's culture, because watching Jet Lawrence ride, everybody thinks that that's the only way to ride because he's the one that's doing it the best, which he is doing it the best. And it is a very smooth, and it does seem like the best way to ride. But there's some guys that style might not work for them. Or at this point, it's going to be really hard to change their style to that.
I'll try to change Tomac to that, right?
There's
when
no
he
way.
gets in beast mode, he is on the gas and he is fun to watch and he is just pinning it. There's two different riders. You know, he's as fast as Jet is too on his good days, but it's a different style.
Well, and I think, you know, if I was Tomac, I'd be saying, okay, well, what could I learn from Jet and how can I implement some of the things that I learned from Jet into the style that I have?
And that's what makes you better, makes you a champion. Yep. You work with your weakness kind of a little bit. You're not going to change your style, right? At this age, you're not going to change the way you ride, but I might be able to make some adjustments.
One thing I'm curious to ask you about is, you know, technique on the bike. Traditional motocross form says you ride on the balls of your feet, you come forward to use your rear brake before the corner, and then you bring your foot back onto the ball. You bring your foot back onto the foot peg on the ball of your foot for the corner so that you can pressure the foot pegs and steer the bike and balance the bike with the foot pegs. Off-road can be different in the sense that we have off cambers, we have rocks in corners, we have blind corners that we can't see around. So I find myself, I appreciate and I practice motocross form, but a lot of times in the mountains or in off-road settings, I'll be riding just with my foot just far enough forward where I can reach my rear brake pedal, and I'll run a shorter brake pedal tip so I can get to it and still kind of have that balance. So what's your perspective on traditional motocross form in an off-road setting versus riding your rear brake in a corner or something different?
It is different. To me, again, I don't overthink it. I never went into a track thinking about what I'm doing with my feet, or I kind of just do it naturally. What I have noticed, like in my form now, is when I'm riding tight woods, I sit down, and when I'm using the rear brake, my foot's not on the peg. My foot's on the rear brake. I hold up with my quads. I'm not actually have my foot on the foot peg, but I have it sitting on the brake pedal, right? And I'm pushing, but it wears out my quad, right? If I'm riding tight woods and I haven't been riding a long time, my quad will get to burning because I'm holding it up. It's hard for me. Motocross, I stand up more. Obviously, everybody does motocross a little more. But when I get into tight woods and stuff like that, I sit down and I'm not putting, like I said, I'm not resting my foot on the foot peg when I'm using the brake. Oh, shit, I just wanted to say something about all that. Which, again, I'm not hard on brakes, or other riders are. Shoot, something came to mind I wanted to say. I'll forget it. I'll come up with it.
Would you, on like a left-handed corner, would you have your foot on the foot peg, or or are you against using your rear brake in the middle of a corner?
Typically, I wouldn't do that, no. I'm more of a guy that does most of my braking prior to the corner, and then everything kind of comes off and I float. You know, I carry good corner speed. I don't come into it too hard.
Yes.
A little bit, right?
So a controlled entry and then a fast corner and a really fast exit.
Correct.
Is what you're going for.
Correct. I think I learned a lot of that because I used to do a lot of flat track and scrambles type racing when I was a kid. And that's all flowy turns. So you learn how to carry corner speed.
Yep.
Instead of coming in knifing and exiting and, you know.
Yep.
But back what I was thinking earlier, you know, when we were talking about what I forgot it was wanted to say was, again, off-road and 6 days and all that, we kind of have to adjust our bikes to that type of racing. If I have my rear brake pedal adjusted the way I might adjust it for motocross and go out in the woods, it'd be too low. You're going to catch it in roots. You're going to catch it on rocks. Break it away. So in off-road, I always run my brake a little bit higher up above the foot plate because I didn't want to take a chance of ripping it off in roots or rocks or, you know, so you kind of got to, you prep your bike a little bit different too.
Prep your bike different based on the conditions or the style of racing.
Correct.
That
If
makes
I
sense. I
know,
never even
if me
considered
and
that.
my mechanic Mark Hyde, we knew we were going to West Virginia and there was gonna be a lot of tree roots in the trail or a lot of stuff that, could snag the rear brake or something like that.
Vines or
We
something.
would run the brake pedal up a little bit higher than normal, and I would have to adjust to it, right? It might not be where I want it, but I'm still gonna have a rear brake pedal at the end of the race.
Huh. I never even considered that. Did you ever run tape on your hands or anything like that?
I did, mainly for Florida because I didn't care for sand as much, and I knew I'd go to Georgia the next week and win. So I didn't want to go to Georgia with my hands all tore up, and I wasn't too much worried about my results in Florida.
You're thinking 2-3 steps ahead.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't a great sand rider. I knew I didn't like it that much. If I could go there and get top 5, I knew I was going to Georgia to win. And the worst thing, and back then we would race on Tuesday in Florida and on next Sunday, so it'd be only 5 days, right? So if you tore up your hands in Florida, you're screwed for Georgia.
Was that
So
part of Daytona
my
Bike Week
motto,
or something?
what's that? Yeah, it was during bike week.
Yep.
My motto was to come out of Florida with the best result I can. Top 5 would be great. My hands are good and fresh. I'm going to Georgia to win.
That makes sense. Did you run the tape for 6 days just for preventative maintenance?
I believe I did. My calluses were good. And again, at 6 days, you're not hanging on tight for 8 hours.
Right.
You're riding loose and you're only
Right.
sprinting for 7 minutes.
Right.
So I didn't really get blisters and stuff like that because I wasn't pushing that hard for so long. And you prep yourself different for 6 days. And like I said, it's not like I was worried about my cardio and my strength as much as I was just being on a bike and going through the routine all day. Your neck being in shape, and you can sprint for 7 minutes, right? We're in good enough shape for that already. So it's not like I had to train for that before 6 days. I didn't worry so much about my physical training before 6 days. I was more worried about getting my sprint speed up and being mentally prepared.
Awesome.
I mean,
I'm so excited.
Definitely, I'm not saying it's easy and you don't get tired or burned out. It's a different type of physical workout. It's just you're just on the bike mentally all day. It's a mental workout too.
Absolutely. And that brings me to another question. What techniques did you use or practices did you practice to get locked in, to get in the zone for the test sections for the day, to keep yourself focused? What was your self-talk?
Kind of like I would just race the track. I would try to put my head down and not worry about anything else around me. Just race the course as fast as I could. I remember, back when I first got into GNCCs again, the guys would walk the course and they would hang up little pieces of ribbon like, oh, I can turn early in this corner, and save a second here. So they'd hang ribbon so they would remind them where to turn, or, it was like these little shortcut lines, right? And I remember walking and going, fuck, if I spent more time worrying about looking for my ribbon, I could go faster if I just raced the course, even if I take the longer route. You know what I mean? So I'm more focused on the course, just racing.
Focus on the course.
Not trying to read ribbon and remember where I hung this. And, oh, yeah, this is that line. Okay. Oh, yeah. Don't forget that one. Oh, I just raced,
And when your mind starts to drift, whether that's in a test section or in the transfer sections,
6 days, that's
how do you manage that? What do you say to yourself? How do you keep yourself in the game? Because you have to be in the game. Because even if when you're in a test section, if your mind starts to drift and you catch a rock and you go over the bars, that could be the end of it. So how do you keep yourself
not
in
so
the
much
game?
in the test? I had a problem with that because, like I said, when the test started, I was focused. I was racing, right? What a big problem at 6 days really is, you just hit it right on the button, was, you're out there on the bike for 8 hours and you're cruising for 6 hours of it, right? You're not cruising, but you're, in a comfortable pace. So you start talking to yourself, you start going, oh, what if this, and what am I going to do later? What are we going to have for dinner? And you're riding the bike and then all of a sudden you clip a tree. And then what else was hard for me was to be knowing that the speed average was slow. So it was easy. So then you're not really pushing at all. You're kind of just cruising. And then all of a sudden you come to a test. It was hard to get out of that cruise mode and get into that sprint mode right now. That was something that was hard. And I don't know, I didn't ever really, I acknowledged it, but I didn't really work on anything to make me better at it. I just knew that, because that was the hardest thing for me. I think coming off of a ride, cruising for the last 45 minutes, just kind of on a trail pace. And then all of a sudden we're lined up for a test, got a sprint wide open. There was some times that was hard to switch to. I never really had trouble focusing when I'm racing. But if I'm full on racing and I'm not cruising, I'm focused on going faster, reading the ground, reading the terrain, trees coming up. I'm always one step ahead. And the reason I know that is it's just like everybody always says, when you get older and you're about ready to retire, you start thinking about things differently.
Totally.
When I was racing, I was always 2 steps ahead. And when I was ready to retire, I was always thinking about, what if I clip that rock and it clips me into that tree, or what if this, or what if that? I was like, whoa, I'm not racing anymore. You know what I mean? You're worried. But when I was in the zone, when I was racing, I was focused.
Yep.
So it wasn't too hard for me to focus for the 3-hour GNCC. I always had a game plan, and I was always focusing and and staying in the race. But 6 days was definitely hard because we would be cruising. I would be thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner or what I'm going to do
Yeah.
here, what I'm going to do there, and what I need to change on the bike next. What am I going to do for the 10 minutes I have when I get in? I hope they got the right tire. And all of a sudden, it's hard. And all of a sudden you're at a test. That was hard.
How would you bring yourself back when your mind would start to drift?
Oh, most of the time it didn't. I mean, I didn't have any secrets.
It sounds like you had a level of awareness that you felt. Like you were self-aware in the fact that you knew what worked for you. You knew that you just needed to read the terrain. So if your mind started to wander, you would just default back to read the terrain, focus on the next turn. Let's stay here. Let's stay here. So you would almost become aware of your mind starting to drift, or you were aware of the fact that, hey, we just got done with the long transfer section and now we're dropping into a test and intensity is going to be high. And I think awareness is a big part of it for me, because if you're like aware of it and you can say, hey, we just got done with a big transfer, we're dropping into the test, this is going to be intense, let's get ready. Just doing that and acknowledging it is
Right.
going to help get you in the mode and help prepare you for it. One thing that we've spoken a lot about in the past, a lot before we did this, I did a lot of reading on you and watched a lot of your videos and stuff. Having fun seemed to be like a key part of it for your career. Why is having fun so important?
And I think I learned a lot of that because in GP motocross, when I started living in Italy, and when I was in Brazil, I was having fun. I was racing. When the Europeans would come down there, I'd win. Had a fun life, had a good life, surround myself with good people. If I had 2 weekends off, I didn't have to go racing. We would go to the beach and, spend the weekend at the beach and have a good time. I learned that. And then I come back, as I get older and I retire from GP motocross, because motocross, kind of living in Italy, I didn't really like it as much. So I didn't have nothing to do but race and train. And it became a job. I remember getting up a couple times. I remember getting up in my apartment and going, okay, what time do I have to go riding today? And I remember going, what do you mean? I wasn't looking forward to going. I didn't want to go. I was like, what time do I have to go? Because the team's going to meet me out there. I'm like, man, there's something wrong. When I don't want to ride a motorcycle, there's something wrong, right? Again, learning to change your mindset is a big part of it. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But I learned, I remember talking to my parents, and I came home from Italy, not because I didn't have a contract for the next year. I was burned out and became a job. Every time I got on the bike, somebody had a stopwatch on me. I remember I got stung by a bee one time in like a 30-minute moto, and like 20 minutes into it down the lower part of the track, a bee stung me in the neck, and I was trying to get out of my jersey, slow down. I came in when the moto was over, and they're like, hey, what happened on this lap? Why'd you slow down? And were you tired? Were you this? And they're drilling you, right? I'm like, oh, I fucking got stung by a bee. I mean, it was just, it was like they're trying to program you to be a robot, and they weren't just letting me relax and have fun and go do a jump and do a whip, which became a big part of my life when I got into off-road. When I came home and retired from motocross, I remember when Suzuki wanted to hire me, I said no, because I was doing the races on my own for fun, right? I went and did those. I did Virginia City Grand Prix and then 4 qualifiers and won all 5 of them. I was just having fun. Nobody expected me to win. Nobody's, I was just out there on my own dime, having a good time. And it was great. I was riding my motorcycle. So when Suzuki called me up to hire me for 93, I said, I don't think I want to do it. I'm having fun. And me and Mike Webb talked for a couple of weeks. And I said, you know what? I'll give it a try for 1 year, but you leave me alone. You let me do it my way. I go, I'll get the job done, but just, you don't need to call me every week. You don't need to check on me. You don't need to, just give me what I need to do it and I'll go do it. And I won everything that year, all my championships. And then a couple more years later down the road, I remember I had a couple bad races, and you start working harder. You start testing new things, and you're trying to find that speed again. What's wrong with me? And you start working harder and becoming more of a job, and you're trying, and the results aren't there, and you're not having fun. And I remember realizing that. And there was 1 year I dominated the GNCC. I won with 5 races to go. Back then we had four throwaways, and I won with the 4 throwaways I didn't need, and plus I won with a race early. So 5 races to go, and I won the championship. I don't think I ever rode pushed 1 lap on a motocross track that year. Me and Talon Volan became riding partners, and we would go out to like these tracks, and we would go out and we'd put in a couple laps for fun, chasing each other. He was riding motocross, I'm doing off-road. So come Friday, we would root for each other. Hey, good luck this weekend. Good luck to you. And we'd meet back up on Monday. How'd your weekend go? How'd yours go? But we were such good training and riding partners because I wasn't competing against him. He wasn't competing against me, so we root for each other. But yet we'd go out and do big whips, hill climbs. We were just having fun on a motorcycle. I mean, it was crazy how we didn't take it seriously. We'd go ride for fun, and then I'd win every race. It was like, because I was having fun. When you're having fun, things are flowing. It just is.
Do you think that's something that's lost in racing culture nowadays?
I've even analyzed it a little bit, watching motocross, supercross over the years, being retired. And, you would hear Carmichael or Villapoto or whatever win the championship that year, and they would go, yeah, it was just a good year. And me and Alden Baker had a great program, right? And I started thinking about that and analyzing that, and that program, you know what when they're talking about that program, it's knowing when to take a break on the training and knowing when to ramp up your training, right? So if I have 2 weekends off, which is really 3 weeks, right? If you have 2 weekends in the middle off, that's 3 full weeks. I would take, when I come home from the GNCC knowing I had 2 weekends off, I would go take the boat and go out for a week. I would go have fun for a week. And then the second week, I would start riding a little bit more. And then the third week, I'd ramp back up and go to the next race and be ready, focused. If I tried to stay training hard all the way those 3 weeks for no reason, right? I wouldn't let myself go. I still stayed in shape. I'm out water skiing and doing whatever, having fun. You got to know when to take a break and you got to know when you can't take a break, right? It's a good program. So when you hear the guys talking about, Alan had a great program or the program this, it's a balance of fun and work because you still got to do the work, right? Like I said, you can't win championships and not put in the work. I had no problem putting in the work. I learned, again, I said we'd talk about mindset here a little bit. I learned in my off-road career that instead of me going, I got to get up tomorrow and go for a run at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd get up, I want to take my dog for a run. I want to do it for her. It would change. It was fun because I wanted to do it for her. It wasn't I have to go do it. I have to go take a run. If I have to go do it, it's different, right? It's the same thing with, I love mowing my grass when I have plenty of time. When I don't have time, I hate it, right? It's a freaking hassle. But smelling the fresh cut grass and going out there, it's
meditation.
Yeah. But when you don't have the time for it, it's not. So same thing, your racing career, you got to know when you have to push, and you don't have to when to take a break a little bit, and relax.
Totally. It's so funny to hear you say that because I was born in 91, so I was a huge Jeremy McGrath fan, obviously, right? And a Rodney Smith fan and a Steve Hatch fan, and I'm a 90s moto baby. I remember the reason I kind of started to I didn't really like Carmichael at the time because he was dethroning McGrath and whatever, it didn't really matter. But I love and respect Carmichael, don't get me wrong, but it was the attitude that McGrath had that I loved so much. He would come out, he had earrings, he had purple hair, but you know what? He was having fun, and he would get on the podium and he'd be like, we got to be the luckiest people ever. I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so stoked to be up on the podium. And you could feel it in him, and that to me was so inspiring. It's like, look at this guy. He's living the dream, and he's recognizing that he's living the dream, and he's got the best life ever. And then you contrast that with like a Villapoto perspective. He looked mad every time he looked miserable.
Never happy, yeah.
He was never happy, and I'm like, that doesn't resonate with me because I do this because I love this and I am in pursuit of my best life. And I think that's one of the reasons why I loved Jeremy McGrath so much.
Well, back in the day, even Rick Johnson, Rick Johnson was one that would go surfing and ride his dirt bike for fun and do this and do that and then win on the weekends. And you had Johnny O'Mara and David Beatty and all that would spend all the day, all week long at the gym training and working. It became more of a job to them. Rick was beating him, but he wasn't as focused on his training. McGrath was kind of the same way. They're in great shape, right? They're just having fun with all different sports and not taking it so seriously. Like, I got to be at the gym for 8 hours. I got to go do a run. And that's kind of what I was talking about when I said I learned a different mindset. Instead of me going, I have to go for a mountain bike ride today, I'm going to go ride bicycles with my buddies this afternoon. And I'd still get the work in, but it was a different mindset. I didn't have to do it. You know what I mean? Even though I knew I had to do it, it was just changed the way I thought about it. Taking my dog for a run instead of me having to go for a run. It made you feel better, right?
How do you trick your brain? How do you trick your brain into enjoying the training that you want to do?
Correct.
That's a really good
and changing up your training. If you're kind of burned out and you've been in the same routine for a little bit, try to think of a way. Hey, I can go play basketball and make it a training day, doing something a little bit different, make it fun. Try to make it fun.
Well, and what I've learned is it's all about creating the stimulus. So if you're doing the same thing all the time, the amount of stimulus response that you get from that, the amount of body adaptation you get from that is going to diminish over time. Whereas if I've been riding 20-minute motos for the last 2 months, and then I'm like, you know what, today I'm going to go for a 30-minute run, that run is going to work me in a way that the 20-minute moto won't.
What's funny with me now in my career? So when I was racing, I rode 3 days a week and, I put in long motos and riding a motorcycle was nothing to me. It was all natural, right? I didn't break a sweat most of the time. And I would come in doing an hour moto on the motocross track and barely break a sweat, not even breathing hard, but I was riding hard. But I always told people, and I learned this too because my ex-wife used to train aerobics and I would take her classes, 5 days a week, I'd take her class. And it becomes such a routine that my body just, it was a routine.
Conditioned.
Sometimes she would go, hey, it'd be a Saturday, we had no racing. And she'd go, hey, let's go take somebody else's class, at the gym, some other girl, whenever we go take her class. And it'd be the same type of class, like a whatever, step class or whatever. And I'd be so sore the next day. It would kick because it was a different routine. I was accustomed to my wife's routine, right? And my body became accustomed to it, just like my body became accustomed to riding. It wasn't a workout for me. It was a routine, right? I get on the bike and just flow. It was just normal. So I
Body
didn't get worked out.
adapts.
I didn't get a sweat. But now at my age, if I go ride for 20, 30 minutes, I'm so sore the next day and I break into a sweat. I'm like, oh, this is what people say, talk about.
How old are you, Rodney? How old are you now?
64. But
Okay.
now riding a motorcycle is a workout for me,
Yeah.
right? So I enjoy going out, go for a ride just to get a workout now, which in my day when I was training and riding a motorcycle to me was not my workout. It didn't do nothing for me. Sure, I was at that level that it did do something for me because I had to get to that level. But, it really didn't. Now I go ride for a day with you guys and fuck, I'm sore for 2 days.
You mentioned that riding came natural to you, and before you mentioned that you wouldn't really pay too much attention to like technique and form on the bike. Where did you learn? Did you have any mentors that you learned your technique from?
I didn't. I really didn't. I think I just played around with some, growing up riding off road and then doing scrambles and flat track and then getting into motocross. I think you learn what worked best and all the different types of, like, I think for sure flat track and motocross. I used to go play around on Friday night. There's a track by my house and we'd go out there and there was Alex Jorgensen and a bunch of, Chris Carr. And I would go out and chase those guys around and learn how to pick up, racing is so intense and so close because everybody's going fast. To pick up a second, you got to figure it out in the corners, coming into it or exiting it or carrying more corner speed. And I think that really helped me out to be a smooth rider and carry good corner speed in my racing career today. I think all the different types of discipline of riding is what, makes you a rider, if that makes
Yep.
sense.
Well, and you were always known for being so well versed in different disciplines of riding. I think that's where being able to adapt, to motocross, to off road, that's where you were so strong, is because you always rode all the things so you could adapt.
Yeah. And again, living in Europe, racing GPs and racing in Brazil, racing all over the world, I had to learn all the different terrain, the ground, because I've always,
Yep.
People ask me, how did you do so good at GNCCs? It was crazy because when I won all my championships in GNCCs, I wasn't riding off road in California. I mean, I'd fly back and forth to the races. I didn't stay on the East Coast. I'd fly back to the West Coast and I wouldn't go ride off road on the West Coast in the summer because it's so dry and slippery and dusty. Nobody'd go with you for one. And two, you felt like you're riding like crap. So it made you feel bad. So all I did was moto all summer long and I'd go back east and win an off-road race, right? Because you know how to ride off. You know how to ride. You don't forget how to ride. And even it's funny to me because today everybody is now became a 250 rider or a 450 rider, one or the other, right? Back in my day growing up in motocross, shit, I'd ride a 125 Kawasaki in the 125 Pro class, a 250 Suzuki in the 250 class, and Yamaha in the open class. It did whatever I had, I would just go out and, it was my weapon. It wasn't like I had to be on the same bike. I mean, nowadays they become so focused on, oh, I can only ride this or I can only do that. And
Yep.
we rode whatever we wanted and just took it and went as fast as we could. But I was going to say, I think, being from the West Coast, everybody goes, how did you win? Because I'm the only guy so far west of the Mississippi to ever win a JCC championship. And I think I look back at it and I wonder why, what did that? What made me different? And I think a lot of it's racing in Europe and racing all the different types of terrain in Brazil. Shoot, I went trail riding one time in Brazil and it started raining. I didn't think I was going to get back to my truck. I've never ridden any type of ground that's been so slippery in my life. I kid you not. I felt like I was on rollerblades on ice. It was, and it didn't rain that much. It was like, yeah, it was red clay, like even worse than Georgia. And it was just a workout just to get back to our cars. But, you learn all the different ground and the biggest thing back east is tree roots. We have those surface tree roots we don't have on the West Coast. West Coast, we have taller trees and deeper roots, right? So even though it's a little bit different woods riding, the East Coast, you get all these spider web roots and stuff that are slippery and you come out of a corner. If you get on the gas, it's going to just skate out from under you. So I think it just riding everywhere just taught me how to, ride in different conditions and train.
Totally makes sense. What else you been working on lately, Rodney? What other projects you got going on?
Just helping out Beta with all of our press bikes and pretty excited with our new 26s coming out. We got some new models, the 350 RX, the motocross bike, and the 250 RX. We're looking forward to the magazines are looking forward to getting their hands on it. I'm heading down there sometime, probably this week or next week. I got some bikes coming in for the press. They air freighted in. And other than that, getting ready for Endurocross with you, Max. Looking forward to that. And, representing Beta and doing a good job there. I do have a ride in Chalice I'm doing with Scott Harden. That is September 5th through the 7th. It's the weekend after Labor Day weekend. And it's going to be it's going to be a bitchin' ride. We got a limit of 150 riders. We got permits, everything. We're going to have doctors on the rides. I think even one of the sheriffs or something's going to ride it with us. But so far we got
Awesome.
quite a few riders signed up and it's looking good and looking forward to that. And then right after the Chalice ride, I'll be getting ready for Endurocross with you.
Excellent. Have you ridden the 350 RX yet?
I have not. It was supposed to be here. There was chances it was going to be here last week by Friday or so, but I think they're held up in customs right now.
I
I'm just
want one
waiting
of
to get the
those.
call from Tim to tell me, hey, the bikes are here, and then I'm shooting down there to put them together, and then I'm taking them down to the magazines because I want to get the 250 and the 350 RX out to the magazine as quick as I can.
Seems like I'm very curious to see how that bike works.
I think this will
I'm
be good.
very
I
yeah.
think it's going to be. I've heard it's an all new motor and everything. It's not just a 300 board out like everybody thinks. It was designed to be a 350. I'm curious in the next year or two to see if the regular 300 RRs become a 350 because there is no real 300 class. It's not like you have to ride a 300 in hard enduros. So 350 could become the next 300.
So you think the 350's got
I don't
off-road
know.
potential?
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe, I mean, honestly, even riding my 250 compared to my 300, the 250 feels lighter, turns better.
For sure. I
So
was surprised, to be honest with you, because I grew up, racing Suzuki's my whole life and riding the RM250 through all my championships. That I actually got on a Beta 250 about a year ago, and I was surprised at how much low end torque it has, like a 300. Like you said, feels lighter because I was under the impression that it would feel like my Suzuki, which had no low end and it was parked in the middle and had good top end. It wasn't like that at all. The 250 was a lot like a 300 character, but just felt lighter. I was really impressed.
well, and that goes back to not having to use the clutch so much, right? Like back
Right.
then, you had to really slip the clutch to get traction, but now you can just go raw and it'll get traction without the clutch.
Right. Well, my first instincts were, it's a 250. The 250 is going to rev a little bit more. It's not going to have as much low end like a 300, but it wasn't. I was really surprised how good the Beta 250 still had low end, but yet still had good top end, and it just felt lighter all the way around.
They
So you're
do
right.
rev better too.
Yeah.
I've been loving the 250. I'm excited to race it. So
Nice.
yeah.
What are we riding? What are we going to be riding in Endurocross?
300. We're at elevation for a lot of those races, and I use that low end torque of that engine so much for Endurocross.
Well, and again, like we talked about last year, you got to really, for me in motocross and stuff too, and Endurocross for sure. If I'm going out training and testing, I'm testing for the start because the start's 30 feet long. You got to get a whole shot. You got to be good out of the gate. If I'm running gearing that works good on the track, but isn't going to get me a good start, I'll run gearing that's going to get me a good start and I'll deal with it on the track because it's so important in Endurocross. You know what I mean?
Totally.
You kind of got to gear, you kind of got to pick the bike and everything you got to get a good start.
Well, and we dealt with that last year. I showed up at the first race with a 14 tooth countershaft, and
Yeah.
I did the first practice, and I was like,
I
bro,
told you
it's
right away that ain't going to work.
not working at all. And we put a 13 on, and it was great. And then and then the next race came around. I go, what do you think, Rodney? Should we try the 14 again? You're like, nah, dude, run the 13 because you're racing, you're riding harder, you're more aggressive on the throttle. Like you're going to want that 13. And we ended up running that all year. And that's what I'm going to go into. I'm going to run the 13 tooth all year, practicing I'm going to run the same gearing. And then, on the 250 earlier in the year, training for ISDE, I was just running stock gearing, which was like 1449 or 1450.
Right.
And somewhere along the way, I switched to a 1350. And I think I'm just going to run the 13 tooth countershaft. I think it gave me a little bit more pickup off the bottom. It kind of got spinned up a little bit quicker. I think probably a little bit less top speed, but I think I'm a little bit heavier. So getting out of the corners is like my primary. I need that worse than I need anything on that 250.
Right. Again, just listen to you talk. It brings up a memory. So I was always a smooth rider that, I always kind of needed a bike that was a little bit more barky and woke up because then it kind of made me a little bit more woke up. If I rode a bike that was real mellow and smooth, and I'm a real smooth and mellow rider, it didn't work good together. So I kind of liked a bike that was a little bit more aggressive because it kind of balanced us out. Whereas Steve Hatch was such an aggressive rider, it would work better for him to have more of a smooth, mellow bike. You know what I mean? It kind of, so like you're just saying, you think of your weight, you think of your riding style. It was pretty interesting when I raced GPs. Europeans would run a 14 counter on the 250 RM250s everywhere. Americans ran a 13 because American tracks were just a little bit more tighter, cut and go. Supercross also. The GP tracks are a little bit more flowy, and you could get away with a 14 counter. The suspension worked a little bit better. So it was just thinking about all those different conditions and styles and help.
I think 13 will be okay. I mean, I tested it yesterday, and I could go 50 miles an hour on the road, like not like what, but just like comfortable 50. So I'm like, I'm not going to need to go more than 50 miles an hour on the transfer sections. So I figured that would be okay. But if I need to change it, I'll change it. I think it'll be good though. I'm pretty confident with it.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So
that's another thing. When you're not sure on something like that, and it's really at the end of the day, it's not going to make much difference. You got to just say, "Yep, this is going to work," and be confident with it.
Exactly, believe in it.
Not second guess yourself.
Yeah, and who cares? It's if you really need to change it, you can change
But if you
it.
second guess yourself and you're thinking about it all the time, it's gonna hurt you.
Totally.
Like we were talking about handlebars and stuff like that when we're talking about Steve one time trusting and trying different brands. And we've been using the same bars for 5 years and you don't know what bend you like already. 5 years later, you're trying to find out what bend you still like because then you're searching, you're not confident.
Totally.
When you're confident and when you're riding, when you make a decision, just go with it. Be ready for it,
Yep. Yep.
and know that you can. I've won races with bent handlebars.
Like you said, do what works for you. You know what I mean? It would be easy to be influenced by what Joseph Garcia was doing, but that doesn't mean anything for you.
No,
You're a different person. You're a different rider, different body, different mind. Like, do what works for you.
For sure.
Well, Rodney, it's been really good chatting with you. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge and your mentorship over the years. I'm so grateful to have you just to be able to spend time around you and learn from you. So it's been an awesome journey.
Yeah, when somebody listens and they learn too with it, it was fun working with you last year.
Well, I'm looking forward to it again this year.
It was as much emotional for me as it was you.
I mean so much, and
and
we're just getting started.
Like I said, I learned even when I give you my advice. I don't tell you this is how you have to do it. I say this is what worked for me, because I don't want you know what I mean. I don't try to take your confidence away. I want you to be your own. But if I can kind of give you an idea to try something, that's how I do it. That's how I work.
Well, and it takes with as I become an older racer, I've become more wise and a better listener, and I think
we'll get older.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that listening and learning how to listen and take good feedback and criticism, you're on my team. You want me to win. You're not here to criticize me and put me down. You want me to win. So anything that you say is just you trying to help. And I think riders keeping that in perspective.
I do think a lot of guys, the older guys or whatever that have had success, kind of get caught up in telling somebody how they have to do it. This is how it works. This is what you have to run. This is what gearing you have to run. It's not true. I want you to be your opinion too. I'll give you my advice, but I don't tell you how you have to do it. Right. Because when I first went to the GPs, Rinaldi team, it was his first year being a team manager, stepping back from being a rider. And I remember him just, this is how you have to ride the bike. This is suspension you have to use. This is the tire you have to use. I know I don't like that tire. I want to run this one. And it just mean I lost my confidence. It was hard. So I never want you to lose your confidence or another rider to lose their confidence. I might give them some suggestions. And if it works for them, it does. If it don't, it don't. Because like I said earlier, I've learned that what works for one rider doesn't work for another.
100%.
Well, you got to work with everybody. Yep. We'll get them.
We'll get them.
Okay.
Well, you're the man, Rodney. Thanks a lot again for your time. And we'll have to do it again sometime.
Right on, Max. Good luck at 6 days.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Cheers.